Hello, 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 and welcome back to an all new episode here on the Desensitized channel. As always, my name is Darius Cook, and I am joined by the lovely Dan Cast. Dan Cast, how you doing today?
You know, I was feeling a little nostalgic, so I figured I should go and potentially get COVID again. So, I'm feeling a little under the weather.
Okay.
Everyone at my job has COVID, so I'm feeling a little sick. So I'm just assuming that's probably what I got. So, other than that,
Wow.
great.
Well, you don't look like someone with COVID. You look like $1 million from here.
Thanks, man. It just hasn't hit yet.
Wow, getting COVID in 2024. How hipster of you. I can't
Yeah,
believe that we're 4 years later and we're still kicking that around.
yeah. Third time's the charm, right?
Third time's the charm. Okay, well, hopefully this is the one that does you in, bud. But yeah, well, anyways, we'll have Cass here fighting through his sickness to get this video out to you guys. Today, the plan is we're going through a big discussion today. We want to discuss, the anime 2024 season for the summer has come to a close for the anime that started the beginning of the summer. And with that, we want to discuss today, is Kaiju number 8 anime of the season? And to do that, we're going to do a full review and breakdown of this season of Kaiju number 8. How does that sound, guys?
Sounds good to me.
Right on. So I guess without further ado, let's dive right into it. The way I want to frame this discussion, because what I want to do is I want to break down the season of Kaiju number 8, and then at the end, kind of compare it to some of the other anime of the season and come to the conclusion which one was the anime of the season.
Hmm.
But to start off this breakdown, I want to go like category by category. So some of the things I want to go through are the animation, the plot, the characters, and kind of talking about the roles that the antagonist and the protagonist play specifically in the season. So just to start off, in terms of executing this season of anime in terms of its production, what do you think of the animation overall?
I thought it was actually pretty good. I mean, it's not something like Jujutsu or Chainsaw Man. Anything that Mappa creates, pretty much. Where it's like, even if they're just some people talking, it's still, really nice to watch. Like the animation's not bad by any means, but when they're fighting, like they really kicked it in. So I mean, that's where it really counts. The last thing you want from like a shonen or like a combat anime is the fights to be lackluster, still frames. You know what I mean? So it doesn't need to be beautiful while everyone's just talking and there's exposition being given. But when the fights kick in, that's where Kaiju definitely shines.
Yeah, I agree. I think the animation was super consistent just
Hmm.
around the board.
Yeah.
And for that, I appreciate it. We can compare it to something like Go Go Loser Ranger of this season. And I think there were some moments that looked gorgeous, but overall, it was like very lacking in the animation department
Hmm.
throughout. And so there was no inconsistency with Kaiju. There were definitely moments where the animation was up to a great degree during those fights. I think that they did a great job, like bringing the animation up, but it never felt like a sharp
For sure.
contrast to
Hmm.
what the standard like animation is for it.
Agreed.
It's not the prettiest anime I've seen though. I
Yeah.
mean, there's definitely other anime that have come out in the last few years that can, their standard of animation is higher.
Hmm.
But if a show's gonna approach it like this and just have like just a standard 7 out of 10 animation style that sometimes jumps versus like a 10 here and 5 here, highs and lows, I think that I would prefer this approach to the animation style overall.
100%.
Dude, how lovely was the final fight in that last episode, though,
Dude.
between Kafka and the captain, Isao? I don't know exactly how to say his name. It's Isao, but
Hmm.
that fight was crazy.
Dude, it was sick. Especially because you thought you had a grasp of like what the kaiju's power was, but then when he like really got like absorbed by it, like you really saw like, oh, he's not even tapping into all of it. You know what I mean? And then it's like one of those situations like AOT or like even Naruto where it's just like they have to have that moment where they control the beast or kaiju in this sense, and it was really cool. And seeing the captain use a previous kaiju's body to like really get those strong weapons and like fully bring it out was really cool to see.
Yeah, it's an interesting like detail. They definitely like earlier on in the season they describe that that's something that they do when
For
they
sure.
defeat kaiju is
Hmm.
they use their bodies like for resources and weapons. But that's not something we actually see to a meaningful capacity
Hmm.
until that last episode where
Yep.
you see him essentially outputting the same level of power that that kaiju would have output at the time. Interesting like power set and like world building aspect to have into it. I'm surprised it took us this long to really like get into that, but it is a super like unique aspect to the story that I think is cool.
For sure. And it's cool that like it's not like, oh, um, I can use this kaiju's body to make any kind of weapon I want. You kind of have to make it within the realm of what the kaiju is capable of. So you kind of just use its powers. Like you can't, I don't know, use some sort of like melee fighting kaiju and then turn him into a big rifle. You know what I mean? Like you've got to
Mhm.
kind of stay within the realm of what the kaiju could do, which is cool because it makes it so you're not going all crazy, making up stuff as you go. It keeps you kind of within the realm of it.
Yeah, honestly, as like a power, like as a concept to put into an anime, I like it a lot on
Hmm.
paper, but I'm a little skeptical of how they're going to write it in the future. For example, I think he was Kaiju number two was like the
Yeah.
kaiju that he had harvested parts
Hmm.
for or whatever. However, I don't necessarily feel like I have a full understanding of what that kaiju's respective power set is.
For sure.
Maybe it would have been aided by like a 3 minute flashback just to see you kind of fighting that kaiju and see how it in its kaiju form fought more so. At this point, we're not very strongly introduced to the kaijus on an individual
For
level,
sure.
or do we have an understanding of the previous ones that have come before? And even the few that we've had Kafka fighting against, they have really cool power sets, but I don't necessarily feel like they're always super well defined of like
Hmm.
what this kaiju's individual ability is. So I think, moving forward in the next in upcoming seasons, if they can really define the unique characteristics of a kaiju and then translate that into weapons, I think that'll be really cool. But from what we've seen so far, I don't necessarily trust that we're going to get that full in-depth explanation of it.
For sure. During the fight, you saw like I don't. Maybe they're like not actual like real flashbacks. Maybe like some still images, but they were trying to explain. Like, oh, I'm doing this. This is what the kaiju excelled in, and blah blah. Yeah, I now that you mention it, I can definitely agree that they probably should get more in depth with it. Really show what the kaiju's doing, especially like who doesn't want to see how they actually took it down. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I would love to see
mm-hmm.
that. I mean, that seems like, I don't necessarily know where you would have fit that into this 12 episode season,
For
but
sure.
I think it would have been incredibly satisfying to have gotten a flashback to see them taking down the kaiju, or just seeing the level of terror that the kaiju ensued, and then seeing the captain fight him after that, and Kafka still coming out on top. That probably would have been a little bit more narratively satisfying.
For sure. I'd imagine as we get further in, they'll start to really like talk more about the specific kaiju's. I mean, if memory serves me right, I feel like in Naruto you'd get like bits and pieces, or you'd even see like the Jinchuriki, and you'd see some of their abilities, but you have no idea about like um, what these tailed beasts are even about, what they look like. You know what I mean? And then like later on, of course, they really went in depth with what a lot of them do, the characters themselves. So there's still a chance, hopefully.
Yeah, sure. That is a pretty interesting comparison, honestly. The only difference here is that it would be different if they were specifically harvesting stuff
Yeah,
from
true.
these
Yes.
Jinchuriki to put into their power system. But that is a good comparison. There definitely is room for us to get more into that in
Hmm.
the future. As far as the animation goes, though, I do want to praise because honestly, as great as that final fight was, my favorite fights is anything involving Hoshina, the second in command
Hmm.
captain.
Oh, so
All of his
sick.
fights. His initial fight with Kafka, amazing. I mean, the level of choreography they're putting into Hoshina's actions, juxtaposed with Kafka's like much more simple fighting style of someone who's, just like a novice fighter, but yeah, he has that imposing force upon him. Like that juxtaposition worked so well in that fight, and seeing him dice up Kaiju later on
Hmm.
towards the end of the season was equally satisfying. He is one like honestly the coolest character out of the series.
Yeah. Honestly, I didn't expect him to be going that crazy, but he did. When I was watching him, I was like, "Holy shit, this is so cool," and it was cool like seeing initially like his skill set isn't very useful in the grand scheme of things because typically the more dangerous kaiju are massive. But it was
Hmm.
cool seeing the captain actually pick him up because she specializes in just taking down the big guys. But getting picking him up to really take down the smaller ones like a Kaiju No.8 or whatever, um, it's pretty cool. His move set is awesome. I'm sure he'll find some sort of way to be able to take on the bigger guys. But it seems like he was kind of really focused on training after that. Like he wants to be able to do it. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the first few episodes, it's not till episode 5 that you even see like anything
Yeah.
menacing from this character, any implication that he's like strong or
Mm-hmm.
capable. But having him as this playful character and seeing the way that he locks in, I mean, he goes from being the comic relief to being the Levi of this series
For sure.
in one moment, and like I fully buy it. Hoshina is the character of the season, in my opinion, and this show actually does have a lot of great characters. I'm
Yeah.
excited to break down each one that I love, but Hoshina steals the show every time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's amazing. He's amazing. Hopefully he gets like a kaiju based weapon later on that kind of ups his game a little bit because I didn't get the implication that he does have one at this time.
Is his are his blades not? Maybe they are. Maybe they are. Maybe they aren't. I don't
I
know.
don't feel like it was well defined. I mean, it
Definitely
might
not.
be
Definitely
kaiju
not.
based weapons, but it's definitely not operating on the same level of what the captain had.
Yeah. I think. I think because oh my god, I'm so bad with the names in this anime. The blonde girl, she got
Hikaru Shinomiya. I
yeah.
wrote down the names for this. Yeah.
I should have done that. Because she got the axe,
Hmm.
and they said it was made from kaiju's. So I'd imagine he also has one, but it's probably not made with like either a named one or like a very
Mm-hmm.
powerful one. But
Yeah, I think that's probably the distinction. I think that's probably it.
yeah, because I maybe they reserve the like the captains and higher up with like the very specific named ones because there's not that many kaiju. I
I mean,
mean, at
there's been
least name
7 of
them.
them.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah,
they can't just give everyone one.
yeah, yeah. That's fair enough. So before we deep dive into the characters, because I have a lot to say about that. Overall, how do you feel about the plot? I mean, just from what we got in these 12 episodes, Kafka being part of the cleanup crew and, working his way into the industry and all the friends he made along the way and the kaiju adventure. What do you think overall?
I mean, honestly, well, first of all, I'm pretty happy that we finally have like a protagonist that's not like 12. So it's cool to see like a grown man. And they really make it like prevalent how there's a big age gap and stuff like that. And um, he really persevered. He didn't give up. And I don't know. I think the plot's really good right now. I think I'm really glad that they didn't keep dragging along him secretly being a kaiju. Like I'm glad they finally discovered it, and because I feel like it was gonna get really lame at a certain point if he just keeps
Yeah.
disappearing. No one's noticing really. Maybe some people have like an idea, but but I don't know. I have no idea what to expect going forward, which is a good thing, I suppose. Um, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I think a lesser version of the series would have that mystery, the narrative of him hiding the fact that he's a kaiju spread out throughout the whole series, and then at the final fight is when everyone would kind of know that
Hmm.
information. I feel like that's how typically a story like this would go. But the fact that the cat's out of the bag at this point does leave it just so interesting. On one hand, it's impossible for me to have any expectations on
Exactly.
what's
Yeah.
coming next, which, from a viewer perspective, I think it's nice to be able to kind of theory craft a little bit more, leave the thread hanging a little bit more strongly in terms of what to expect coming back to it. But on the flip side of that, my intrigue is at an all-time high because, I have it creates this feeling that they're saving something big or a lot
For
more
sure.
big plots to come.
Hmm.
Uh, Super satisfying that they did get that reveal out and that everyone in the squad knows and everyone's kind of standing behind him. I do agree that that choice was it was a surprising one and a very satisfying one, honestly.
Yeah, it was cool to see that like everyone in his squad was like backing him. There wasn't really anyone that like was against it. I mean, even Loki, the the head captain, you know, that was fighting him, still had some belief in him based on what his daughter was telling him. So,
Yeah.
um, you know, it's cool. Everyone was rooting for him, as opposed to everyone just kind of plotting on his downfall, and he like has to break through and then change everyone's minds. He just kind of reaffirmed what everyone was thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And one thing I have to praise, because I think that this is the reason why Kaiju number 8, the season is as good as it is I think the number one reason is down to the pacing. I think that for these 12 episodes, we've gotten so much story,
Mm-hmm.
yet there has been so much levity, there's been comedy, but at no point did it feel overbearing or at the sacrifice of these big weighty narrative moments. I mean, the first few episodes, we start with him as the janitor, basically, doing the cleanup service on these kaijus, and it takes a few episodes for him to fully get started, at the training
Mm-hmm.
facility, trying out to work on the defense force at this point. We're slowly getting introduced to characters. We it takes its time to endear us in the middle batch of episodes to their full squadron and everything. We get multiple kaiju battles, multiple fights between different characters, and we get the reveal, and we get a whole little mini arc in the last 2 episodes about how the defense force at large is going to deal with this reveal. I can't imagine this season being paced any better, honestly.
Yeah. Like you said, it was they definitely threw a lot of comedy in it, and I thought most of it landed. But it wasn't like a big gripe I have with a lot of animes is that like they'll have a very serious moment and then they'll sprinkle in like a joke, and I'm like, oh, you're just killing like all the tension. You know what I mean? Um, they maybe did that like once, twice, but like I never felt like they were really trying to force it, which is a good
It
thing.
didn't hammer it home.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, like you said, like we got a lot of things done. Like a lot of animes struggle with pacing. Like they'll have very slow, 5, 6 episodes to maybe have a big one at the end that
Hmm.
they try and make it feel like, oh, it was it was worth it to get muscle through all those episodes. But I never had a bad time watching any of the episodes, which is pretty rare, honestly.
Yeah, the viewing experience of this, as far as pacing goes, it feels almost, I feel a lot of similarities to this show with Fire Force in
Yeah,
terms of kind of the world that they set up, the character within it, and like the amount of characters around him, and like the government plot moving around him and everything like that. Except for Fire Force's pacing, I think they do undercut their good narrative with these comedic and fan servicey
agreed.
moments. And again, there's a place for it,
Yeah,
but I think Fire Force does 20% too much, whereas Kaiju number 8 knows exactly where to pull the brakes and where to go. I think they really mastered that pacing very well.
I don't even think is there was there any really like big fan servicey moments in Kaiju? I don't think there
Mm,
not to
I can't think of any.
yeah, and yeah, I can't think of any either. And like I think like I've said before, I don't mind fan service as long as it's tasteful, it makes sense. Like I don't need all this fan service that serves no point or like I said, kills tension. Like Fire Force is a big example. Was it Tamaki?
I
Uh,
believe so.
yeah, her Lucky Lecture or whatever.
Yeah,
Like that killed some very big moments, and I feel like
yeah,
it's
for
just
sure.
so not needed at all. Sure, you can make that her thing, but anytime she's on the screen, it's not going to be that serious because that's gonna happen. Like
Hmm.
they should turn it off at some points, but yeah, I don't think Kaiju had like any fan service at all,
Yeah,
which is
it's kind of
rare.
it's kind of unique from anime that are coming out right now. I feel like part of that is because there's not that many female characters, honestly. Like
True, true, true.
the only, major female characters we have are Mina Ashiro, Kafka's friend from
Yeah,
childhood, and then Kikaru Shinomiya. And I feel like the reason we don't have fan service, Kikaru is a child, so
yeah,
good on them for having the
yeah.
restraint not to service
That
fan service there. But Mina, it's interesting because Mina plays this role in the narrative where everyone looks up to her and every guy idolizes her. And in most anime, when that's the case, that character would also be fetishized.
Yeah,
But Mina is able to be idolized, and us as the viewer, we love her. I think we're all in love
yeah,
with Mina, but at the same time, they don't need to fetishize her to service that goal. I'm just realizing this in real time, but that's another great, accolade for Kaiju number 8 is that they were able to pull this off without choosing to go the fan service route, which I think pretty much every anime would have done.
for sure. And it's cool that like they all are like in love with her or whatever, and but they have such a high level of respect and they take their jobs very seriously, that they're not sitting here trying to you know peep on her or like grab up on her or anything for those like comedic fan servicey moments. And yeah, same thing, like the only other female is a child, so that hasn't stopped a lot of animes before, but I'm glad it stopped the creators of
Yeah.
kaiju.
And you touched on this point as well. I do think having a main character who is like in their mid 30s is so refreshing.
For sure.
It's so refreshing, and not only that, because it feels so fresh, it lends to such unique storytelling in terms of this character's perspective. The the hardships that he's overcoming, being the underdog because he's the old man compared to all these like college age kids. It's just a refreshing perspective and point of view. I haven't had this narrative in anime, let alone just like media in general. I think it's not just anime that's guilty of, having protagonists that are all children. I think in media, it tends to be that way a lot of the times, especially for an action oriented series. Kafka is such a refreshing main character. I love him. Like
Yeah,
I relate to Kafka in a lot of ways.
I think it's also cool because typically I feel like they choose like a younger child or someone mid-teens, because it's like a coming of age almost, like they're discovering themselves, all that stuff, but they're kind of showing that you can also do that later on in life, you know what I mean. um,
Mm.
and also because he's had so much experience, he's been around the block, he's like knowledge checking a lot of these kaiju, you know what I mean, like he's seen a lot of things, so he knows a lot of things in terms of that. And you probably wouldn't get that with a younger character that was a janitor for like 30 seconds, you know what I mean.
Yeah, fair enough. So we're getting into characters, but before we jump off of the plot, one thing that I do want to dive into is I noticed that the structure of this series is very interesting in terms of what they want the narrative to be. So on one hand, the overarching narrative is there's kaiju's that are fucking our shit up, and we have to find a way to defend against them. And it seems like they're getting smarter and more strategic and more forceful, right? So that's the main kind of plot. And so within that, we have a lot of mini subplots that make up the story. And I feel like a lot of times in anime, let's use Attack on Titan for an example. That's a similar overall plot, right? The world that we live in is that the
Yeah,
Titans are
yeah,
coming more and stronger. We got to figure out a way to defend against them. However, the main narrative that you're dealing with is a mystery that Aaron is kind of tackling.
yeah,
Similarly, there is a mystery here for Kafka. How how are humans able to be kaiju all of a sudden? However, that mystery honestly gets put to the background in service of individual character motivations
hmm,
coming to the forefront of the plot. So even though we have this overarching narrative and this mystery that's like a hanging thread, the characters aren't, Kafka isn't even thinking about the fact, where did this kaiju come from that went in my mouth, and that mystery isn't the hanging thread
yeah,
that we're really paying attention to. And so it allows all these other characters to kind of come forward, and us as the viewer, we get to sink our teeth into their motivations. And that's one thing I think is really well defined between all the characters is their individual motivations.
for sure. Yeah, I mean, Kafka's the main character, but at the same time, yeah, you're not getting all this internal dialogue about himself, like trying to contemplate where all this started, how this came to be. uh, like you said, they're really letting a lot of the characters shine, and there's a lot of characters. They've introduced a lot, and I find myself interested in all their like subplots. You know what I mean? They're like they have duos, they're like rivalries, stuff like that, and yeah, it's refreshing. It's nice.
Yeah. So yeah, let's go down the line with all the characters. I mean, we already touched on her, so let's go there. Kikaru Shinomiya. what a interesting character specifically to bounce Kafka off of,
Mm-hmm.
right? She's the exact opposite of him, right? She's younger than everybody else, whereas he's older than everybody else, and she has the most implicit, talent out of anyone there, whereas he has the opposite of that
Mm.
potential. So they're kind of flip coin characters of each other, and they choose to kind of pair them up, and I think it makes for a great juxtaposition. I mean, I love seeing her on screen.
Yeah, and not even just all that stuff. It's they're also their personality is pretty different. Like Kafka's more calm, jokey, wise, not so hot tempered, but she's kind of the opposite. Mainly because their age. She's pompous. She's uh, trying to show off. Definitely very more emotionally affected. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, there's a lot of differences between the two, but they work very well together.
And I think her character design just looks awesome,
Yeah, she
honestly.
looks cool.
I don't think all the character designs are awesome in this show, but she in particular, tiny frame with the cool hair and the especially when she gets the axe, her
Yeah,
action scenes just look awesome. She's just a cool character to have in there.
yeah, especially because it's
Um,
like a weapon you wouldn't expect her to have. You'd expect her to have like some sword, maybe like a smaller
mhm,
sword or whatever. But I think even she's shocked. She's like, "What do you mean I have this big ass axe that I have to use?"
mm, mhm. Yeah, I like the framing that they're kind of opposites of each other, which kind of, transitions directly into our next character who fits right in the middle of them is Reno.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I kind of wish we got a little bit more from Reno, but the dialogue that we got from him at the end of the season was pretty strong and like left a good impression on me. But here's my impression of Reno so far. He's kind of in the middle. Like I said, he's the average age range of people entering this industry. He has a lot of potential, but coming into it, he's on the lower end of potential. And as he goes through these battles, he's rapidly adapting
Mm-hmm.
around him. So he's an interesting example of someone who's like who who has a slower approach like Kafka and like more of a calmer disposition. Um, and he's kind of the best of both worlds between them because he has this like more wise approach to observing the world around him, but he can quickly adapt and get better and stronger. Similar to Kikaru, to the
Mm-hmm.
point where by the end of the season he's fighting on an equal playing field with her.
Yeah.
But I really liked how they had his different like shooting style and kind of observation prowess on the
Mm-hmm.
battlefield, complementing her, run in and axe him up kind of style. It worked really well for me.
Yeah. I mean, he's pretty much like you said, like right, like a mix of the both. Um, but yeah, I love seeing how quickly he's getting stronger. I would love to get more dialogue from him. I want to know more about his background. I mean, obviously, all
Hmm.
you really know is like, oh, he became the janitors and quickly became boys with Kafka. But like before that, you have no idea. You have no like. Did they even talk about his like family situation, like anything like that? Like you don't know anything about him really.
No, we really don't. And I think that's the only thing that this show doesn't do amazingly is because they're doing so much. It's only 12 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we get into some of the lesser characters. We don't have too much characterization. We have these dynamics set up between characters, but on an individual level, it is a little lacking. And Reno is kind of an example of that. I mean, we know his vibe and we know what he's here about, but we really don't know who he is as a person outside of these circumstances. Everything he ever says on screen is just really in regards to Kafka or, just trying to get stronger.
Yeah, I think the only reason they wouldn't show him because some background on Kafka, some background of the other girl,
Kikaru.
Kikaru. Yeah, I'll remember that next time. Um, but yeah, you don't know anything about him. My theory is his background is going to be like a big reveal or surprise or something like that. Like
Mm.
I can't imagine you have three main characters really, and you only know about two of them of their backgrounds, and he's also like exponentially growing stronger. Like there's got to be something
Hmm.
there other than like he's smart and able.
Yeah, now that you say that, I'm feeling ready to sink my teeth into this theory because this show, so many of the characters seemingly have familial ties.
Yeah.
In the show, Hoshino comes from a prominent kaiju hunting family, and that's why he has this whole character journey of not being, not having prowess in this way, but doubling down in this other way. Kikaru obviously is the daughter of the head honcho of the
Hmm.
whole damn thing. And then there's another character, I believe it's Furu Hashi, has implied that he has powerful family connections within the defense force off screen.
Yeah.
He was making calls to them and everything. We don't know to what capacity that is, but it seems like they're setting something up there as well. So I think you might be onto something. It stands to reason, with the characters that we have around, that there could be some reveal about what family he comes from that informs something more about his character later on.
Hmm. For sure.
That's interesting. I like that theory. I want to sink my teeth into that. Um, that being said, the other characters in the crew, again, they don't get super distinctive characterization. However, just to go down them, there's Aoi, AOI, Furuhashi. Those two kind of have their rivalry
Yeah.
going, and then there's Haruichi, who he's the one with the hair that kind of goes like this,
Yeah. Yeah.
typical Japanese gangster hair. Um, Seems like he's developing more of like a one-on-one relationship with Reno
Yeah.
towards the end of the season,
Yeah.
which I like because it kind of pushes Reno and this other character more out
Hmm.
of their shell, and like you get more out of them. I did have fun with when they were kind of working together on the battlefield and kind of coming together against Kaiju number 10, who was super menacing. I can't wait to talk about him, by the way.
Insane.
Um, but, what's that? Oh yeah,
He's
yeah.
insane.
But other than that, I mean, do you have anything to say on these kind of side characters?
I don't have anything too crazy. I mean, obviously, they only had 12 episodes. They couldn't go super in depth with them, but from what I've seen, I do enjoy a lot of what I'm seeing. Like I like they've set up, which ones are rivals with each other. They've given a little background on like what maybe their motivations are, or what their background is, like what their like some of them have rich families that are part of the defense force. Some of them are just like you said, the prominent hunters. Um, so I'm sure they're gonna dive a lot more deep. I think every one of these characters are gonna have their own moment where you really see what they're about, their background, everything, and what really motivates them. But yeah, you can't fit all that in 12 episodes, really.
Yeah, they did about as good as they could in that regard. Yeah, there's not much else you could have done there.
For sure.
To kind of end the review, and then we'll talk about how it stands compared to other anime. I really want to dig into these last 2 points, antagonist and protagonist. And before we get into the antagonist, because I do think Kaiju number 10 is technically the antagonist of the series. Um, I think their approach to setting them up is very interesting and unique. But as far as like protagonist, we've already talked about how unique of a protagonist Kafka is. But one point I want to dig into is his power scaling. So far from what we've seen, and this I've never seen this from an anime before. Introduce your main character and give him his power set, and he's immediately stronger than anybody else in the universe. And when that ever gets tested, it's not even close.
Hmm.
Any kaiju he fights, he defeats them in an overwhelming capacity. And in the end of the season, he fights the number one person on the defense force, the captain of the whole thing, and only doesn't kill him because he managed to restrain himself at the end. In the whole fight, it could be said that he's restraining himself the whole time. I've never seen an anime that sets up their main character to be this much stronger than everybody else, and we don't even necessarily get the sense that there's anyone who can contest him at this point. I don't know how that doesn't feel bad, but for some reason the show pulls it off. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's kind of like One Punch Man or Mob Psycho. You know what I mean? Like the
Okay.
protagonists are immensely strong. Anytime the going gets tough, they damn near one shot them. You know what I mean? It's just like a dependent on what they want to do. But those are all fun. Like they all do it very well. I think Mob and One Punch kind of lean more into the comedic side of it, almost. But yeah, they definitely. It's crazy being able to have a story where the protagonist is pretty much the strongest person in the room up until this point, and it not be really boring. You know.
That's a great comparison. I didn't think about those. I thought this was the first time I had seen this done. So you're right, it has been done before. Um, it's interesting because Kafka always feels like an underdog.
Hmm.
It's impressive that they walk that line with him as a character, that he feels like an underdog, yet every interaction he has, he's pulling his punches, and still overwhelmingly dominating. So it's very interesting. I wonder why he's so strong. Maybe it has something to do with, human capacity mixed with the kaiju capacity. They've also, in that last fight, they implied that this kaiju entity does exist almost separate from him within his self, that it will be a power struggle at some point. Kafka definitely seems like a host for this kaiju to get even stronger. So there is some interesting hanging threads there. Said the antagonist, Kaiju number 10, what did you think of him and his characterization?
It's kind of crazy because the first time you see him, you don't think he's gonna be the big bad. Um, you thought maybe he's just some fodder that you're gonna run into, and then he escapes, and then through the way he talks and stuff like that, it seems like he's significantly stronger, or at least has some sort of plan. Like he doesn't seem that worried about Kafka or anything. You know what I mean? He's just kind of um, lurking in the shadows for now. So he's
Yeah,
definitely plotting something, but he's definitely pretty creepy looking
yeah.
compared to the other kaiju that we've seen. But yeah, I'm interested to see. I mean, you don't see too much about with him aside from his fight and him doing stuff in the background. But uh, I'm a fan. I like it.
It's interesting they choose to keep him in the background because I do think, I mean, as far as any character we have right now, he's our main antagonist. Like of what we have available to us, we can assume he's our big bad of the entire series. So it's interesting that they choose to do less is more with him, because when I think about Kaiju, I don't think about him very quickly. We don't know what his like next plans are, and so he doesn't necessarily feel at the forefront in terms of being an antagonist.
Hmm.
That being said, the scenes that we did get with him, kind of in the middle of the season, we've already seen how scary he can be, and it seems at the end of the season, it looks like he was basically studying human culture at
Yeah,
like a mass degree. So it seems like he's going to evolve very quickly, and his ability to kind of take over human bodies and use them as camouflage to get where he needs to be, I think is definitely a very compelling tool because at some point he's probably going to take over someone's body that's very close to us. So I'm sure that'll be very interesting to see. He really reminds me of Megumi from JJK, and I know that they're very different characters,
yeah.
but a lot of the body gore kind of horror that's happening with him, and how he can morph his body in different ways and do bullets and stuff like that. He reminds me of Megumi, and if he continues to be similar to Megumi, I think that'll be some very interesting and unique fight sequences that we've already gotten from that character. So I think he has a lot of potential to be very compelling and a very scary force.
Yeah, it seems like he definitely has more variety in his abilities than some of the other kaiju we've seen. And like you said, it seems like he has the potential to kind of evolve, or at least in become more dangerous as he learns more.
Hmm.
Seems like a lot of the other kaiju that we've seen aren't really thinking too much ahead. They're just kind of doing. So
Hmm.
that's kind of the scary part about him is he's sitting there taking in the information, he's learning from it, and he's like setting setting stuff in motion. It's not just like him just straight up just I'm just gonna go attack him. He's definitely planning something. He's obviously he can take over the bodies like you said, so he can definitely get a lot done.
Oh yeah, and he was like playing chess, right?
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
like
yeah.
playing chess multiple times at the same time to kind of get an idea of like what human like intelligence capacity is like. It's very interesting. I mean, that's just awesome. That immediately gives me like Hunter Chimera Ant vibes.
Merowim.
Playing yeah, Maryland to play chess to kind of learn and kind of gain a perspective on human consciousness and whatnot. Um, I'm interested to see where they come from. I mean, it's a different world. Are they basically aliens? Is it a different universe? There's a lot. Honestly, the more I talk about this, the more I'm realizing kaiju has such a unique approach in every aspect. It almost like zags where every anime zigs, and so
Hmm.
it just feels very refreshing. Again, there's some aspect where it doesn't nail it every time, and in terms of visuals, it's not the best thing I've seen, but I appreciate how refreshing and just unique that this series feels.
For sure. Um, Yeah, I mean, yeah, I couldn't really say it much better myself. Yeah, I'm. This is definitely one of my favorites of the season, if not my favorite for sure.
Yeah, coming into this conversation, I was a little bit like, you know, it's a front runner to be the anime of the season, don't get me wrong, but I was willing to make a case that it wasn't. But going through this conversation, I'm feeling pretty high on Kaiju, to be honest. I can't wait to get more of the series.
Yeah, I mean, what's its competition for the season? You know, Demon Slayer, My Hero.
Hmm.
Uh, the only other one I was really watching, I think, was Go Go, which I dropped. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah, Demon Slayer didn't have its best season. Obviously, they ended with a pretty big bang, but I don't think it makes up for the slow pacing of the episodes that led up to it. I
Yeah.
think there's probably ways they could have made it a little bit more entertaining. Um,
Mm.
and then My Hero definitely has had some very big moments, um, but from what I know they're capable of, I feel like I haven't seen anything too remarkable in front of the animation standpoint in like a lot of their
Hmm.
fights. Like I don't think this is plot wise it's very interesting, but I don't think it's like probably their best season, you know?
And it started later as well, and so like I if this is a great season, it's going to happen later, so it's hard to
Yeah.
compare it
True,
in
true,
terms of
true.
timeline to Kaiju. I'm with you on that though. I also think that MHA, I don't love their fights a lot of the times. A lot of the
Yeah.
times their fights feel like staging.
Mhm.
It feels like I'm charging up a move, I do the move, and then you just see the character pass the other character having done the move. It's like it's almost like flash images, and they're great. They're great set pieces, but yeah, the choreography is a little bit lacking. And I just agree with you. It's a good season of MHA. It's
Yeah.
not its best season. It's not it's not breaking the internet. I'm seeing very little conversation about the season overall. So I agree with you.
Yeah, and like, the most recent episode, Endeavor from what it seemed like landed the kill shot on All for One, and you would expect that sequence to be really cool because like the I forgot what season it was, but the season finale he was fighting that one Nomu. The animation
Hmm.
was awesome. It looked great. It felt really strong. All eyes are on him. He can't lose this. But it almost didn't feel as impactful, even though this is supposed to be a pretty big moment for him. Um, yeah, like I said, the choreography, the animation, it wasn't bad by any means, but it
Hmm.
really didn't do what I know they're capable of.
Yeah, for some reason, even though we're in what's essentially the final arc of MHA, and these are good set piece
For
moments
sure.
on paper, for some reason it's lacking like emotional gravitas. Like the stakes don't feel high for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. It's falling. This season's falling a little flat, and I don't know if I could put my finger on any one thing, but it just feels a little devoid of like I guess just gravitas. Yeah.
Yeah, like Todoroki fighting, his brother. Uh, when I was watching it, like I didn't like it was definitely like a big moment, but like compared to some of his other fights, it didn't have me feeling as much. Like I felt more watching Todoroki fight Midoriya in the tournament than I did,
Hmm.
watching that. And the stakes are even higher. This has been a moment that's been leading up for a while, and like
Hmm.
it just seemed like it led up to just one big exchange, and then you didn't even really
Yeah.
see that much, and then it was over. So like,
Dude, I gotta say, in the manga, that fight was so much better. It
oh,
was
I
also
bet,
just so much longer.
yeah,
And this is one of the biggest fights of the season series, honestly. Like Todoroki's been one of the main characters set up in the beginning. Dabi's been one of the main villains. You got this crazy reveal at the center of it. This is actually one of the biggest plots that's supposed to be handled. And I gotta say, it was just a milquetoast version of what it should have been.
yeah. It's like I'm gonna charge this attack. Everyone protect me in the meantime, and then he does the attack, and then that's kind of the end of it. Like there's some dialogue in between, but maybe a couple flashbacks. But at the end of the day, like it felt like it should have been a lot more than it was.
And Endeavor's crew was nothing. I mean, these are cool characters by design they've been present throughout the series, but we don't see anything from them. They didn't provide anything in that fight. That was like so silly. And the fight it felt really short. it was beautiful. I mean, there was some beautiful animation, but emotionally, they didn't get me there as a viewer. Yeah.
But so like that all that kind of leads up to me thinking Kaiju kind of stole it this season. Honestly, if Demon Slayer was just a little more interesting, leading up to the final episode, it would have probably been a closer um, contender. But I don't know.
Yeah, if the season was anything like what the final episode was, yeah.
Exactly.
It definitely ended on a 10 moment, though. I'll give it that.
Oh,
It was great.
100%.
But
The final episode was awesome, but
yeah.
I don't know if that made up for everything that led up to it for me.
And if you asked me at the beginning, like when, some of our first episodes of this podcast was talking about the first episodes of these seasons, Go Go Loser Ranger episode one, I would have called my bet anime of the season. This premise of Power Rangers meets the boys, espionage, going on the inside. I've loved Power Rangers since I was a kid. So I think that series had so much opportunity to be great. And I don't even barely want to talk about Go Go Loser Ranger,
Yeah,
man. That was the biggest disappointment in so long.
yeah,
Every episode just got sloppier and sloppier. I mean, where is the narrative going? I have no idea. It's so silly the way they handled Go Go Loser Ranger.
yeah. It was kind of what I was talking about that I was scared of Kaiju doing. It's like it feels like they're not. He's not like keeping hidden in like a way that makes sense. Like you're doing all these fights, and it's talked about how if you get touched once, like you're just gonna get revealed. Like it doesn't make any sense to me that this guy who has horrible combat abilities is like not getting hit ever. No one really is finding out. Some people are, but like I just feel like nothing's really happening. Like I don't know.
It's just sloppy.
Yeah, it's
It's
just
just
not great.
sloppy, honestly. It's just like characters show up out of nowhere, episodes end and just pick up. Even the transitions from scene to scene feel like jarring,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Character motivations are flat. I hate the trope when, they solve something and then you get a flashback later of, oh, during the chaos of this fight, I actually went over to this person, had this little side conversation and sorted out this plot.
Yeah,
Like, come on, man, come on. Yeah, Go Go Loser Ranger, super disappointing. Has no right to enter this conversation. That being said, I will stand here and I will make an argument that Windbreaker deserves to be a part of the conversation for anime of the season. Did you ever
yeah.
get around to watching it?
I saw a couple episodes,
Yeah.
so I can't really give too much feedback on it. But from what I saw, it was good. I wasn't too crazy about the plot. You could definitely, explain your case on why you think it is. I just can't give you too much, feedback.
Well, let's start here. It's definitely the best looking anime of the season. For every single shot of this series is gorgeous. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it is really one of the best looking anime I've seen in a long time. The only, Zom 100, first 10 episodes was a beautiful anime as well. I'm not going to talk about the substance necessarily, but that's something that comes to mind in terms of being as pretty consistently as this anime was. The characters are pretty awesome. I mean, this is a very good sports anime. It's not technically a sports anime, but that's exactly the category it kind of fits in
Mm-hmm.
thematically. A lot of unique characters. The fight choreography was consistently well done, and they introduced some antagonists. There was a tournament arc in the middle of the season, um, and they introduced some antagonists, and you basically got five individual backstories of these antagonists.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best I've seen in terms of introducing a character's backstory and defeating that character in the same episode. This was the most compelled I felt in that structure before. For what this show wanted to accomplish in its 12 episodes, excuse me, 13 episodes actually, I think it really knocked it out of the park. That being said, as far as promise for future seasons and story goes, I basically have no expectation. They set up a kind of a mini arc to kind of explore in the next season, but it's not that compelling. It's all about new characters that we just got introduced to. Um, the emotional journey of the main character Sakura Hakura is the best thing to sink your teeth into in the series. But as well as I like this one season of anime, I don't actually think it can unseat Kaiju for just how much potential it
Mm-hmm.
has to be. I think years from now, we're going to be talking about kaiju. We're going to be in the theater seeing a kaiju movie. I don't think that Windbreaker will reach the same heights, but for what it's done, I got to say it knocked its season out of the park. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10.
Damn, that's high praise. Yeah,
It is, yeah. I really like it. Yeah.
I was gonna say, yeah, it seems like it's not something that like the plot's gonna keep you going for the whole entirety. You know, I think that anime, from what I picked up, is gonna be focused mainly on just having pretty fights, good choreography, entertaining watch, but maybe not like the most strong plot that you can carry on for a long amount of time. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think out of potential alone, I'm sure Kaiju has a little bit more.
For sure. The plot and the premise is the weakest part of that
Mm-hmm.
show, honestly. I think it lives and dies by its characters and animation.
Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a show that like is sick solely based on having cool fights, whatever plot maybe not as strong. Like one that I can think of that was supposed to be like that was Record of Ragnarok. It's like the plot sucks, but you've got all these gods from different cultures fighting, like humans and big historical characters. But they sadly had horrible animation, so much still frames, like the budget of like
Yeah.
$30.
Yeah.
So I mean, if your one thing that's holding you, in place is having cool fights, cool action, and you're not even delivering that, I don't know why you would ever think of putting it out there.
Yeah, I mean that show was fumbling. I agree on paper that is a premise that can have me checking in every week to
For
see
sure.
these legends show up, but it really the execution of that show was pretty disappointing.
But yeah, I mean, I think that about wraps it up for this season, Kaiju number 8.
Yeah. Yeah, you heard it here. It's official now that the Desensitized podcast has declared it. Kaiju number 8 was this anime of the season, summer 2024. You could wear your crown, Kafka.
And I'm sure he'll happily sport it.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think that's just about going to bring this conversation to a close. Thank you for joining us here on the Desensitized channel. Kat, what do you have to tell the lovely folks at home?
Obviously this new anime season's starting. We're gonna keep you all updated on that. We're gonna do some more content that's not just revolving around reviews. We're gonna explore and do a little bit more fun stuff. Don't want to say too much yet, just because we haven't finalized everything. But on top of that, if you're into gaming, I stream maybe like 3-4 times a week. So catch me on Twitch, username WizardCast. Anything you would like to add, Darius?
Yeah, this guy puts the gay in the gamer because he's so happy when he plays. It's something to see. No, that's that. I think that's it. That'll bring this conversation to a close. Check us out on TikTok at Desensitized Pod. Hit us up on YouTube. Like, subscribe. We need the help, so we would appreciate that.
Please.
But for now, yeah, I think for now that's gonna cut it. Cass, good luck with your COVID. I hope it goes well. Yeah, I think that's gonna be it.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
Yeah, I've got to go participate in local improv theater. All right, let's get out of here.